Today, I'm interviewing Rick about what it was really like to live on a nuclear submarine for months at a time.
Oh, it was just like any other job. I came out of it just fine. I came out of it just fine.
Yeah, right. Anyway, I'm going to ask the questions most people never think to ask.
And I'll tell you what brown dolphins are. Trust me, you do not want them.
So I've always said that you've lived several lives in one lifetime. So can you introduce the young Rick?
Well, sure. I was literally right out of high school. I was still 17 years old. And one of my friends was talking about joining the Marines. So at first I was going to join the Marine Corps. But then I started doing a little more research and I got intrigued by submarines. Had never really thought about it before, but I just found them intriguing. And what really got me into it is at that time in my life, I didn't have the greatest self-confidence in the world. And a lot of people started when I made it known that I wanted to go in the Navy and be a submariner, a lot of people started telling me, "Oh, you can't do that. You'll never make it in that. You'll never pass the school or whatever." And for one of the first times in my life, I rebelled. I said, "Well, damn it, I'll show you." And that's sort of the story, just right immediately out of high school.
Wow, so you proved them wrong.
I did, yeah.
So when people think about submarine, they usually think movies and drama. Is any of that accurate?
Well, it depends on what submarine movie you watch. In the old submarine movies of yesteryear, like in the 60s and 70s, it's kind of funny because every submarine movie back then, you'd see the shot of the submarine underwater and you'd hear the bing, bing, the active sonar. Well, in real life, active sonar is rarely used. We use passive sonar to listen. And active sonar is useful when it's needed. It sort of works sort of like bat sonar. You send out the pulse and listen for the return, for the bounce back. But with passive sonar, you're just listening. But if you use active sonar all the time, like in the movies of yesteryear, you're defeating the purpose of what a submarine is for. It's called also the silent service. And if you're pinging active sonar all the time, you're not being silent.
That's true.
And another thing that the older movies is kind of funny now is especially if they were talking about nuclear submarines, which were rare then. I think the first nuclear submarine, the USS Nautilus, came about in the 50s, mid to late 50s. I should know that. I don't know the exact year. But anyway, yeah, some of the submarine movies back then they would announce on the loudspeaker, the 1MC, the reactor is critical. And in any movie dealing with a nuclear reactor back then, if that came across, it was like, ah! All the reactor is critical means is they lifted the rods and it's working now. It's on. That's all it means. But what is not fiction is they actually do announce when the reactor is critical. It comes across the 1MC, the reactor is critical. But, us being submariners, all the guys would always go, ah! Yeah, like later movies like The Hunt for Red October, I can't say they get it wrong because they're going for drama, but they really don't show anything about what living on a submarine is like. But that's not the intent of the movie. The intent of the movie is to be dramatic, and I actually like that movie.
Of course. So from what you said, it sounds like, this was serious, right? This was a job, but you also had fun.
Oh, yeah. It's some of the guys that I served with, if you just saw us on the street or out in a bar or something, you wouldn't think that we'd be able to tie our shoes. But it was amazing when the chips were down, when we needed to get serious. We'd go from being these goofy idiots into, boom, consummate professionals. And even to this day, if for some reason the Navy came up with, well, we've got this old submarine that nobody knows how to work, and we want to recall you 60-year-old geezers into, to this day, I'd probably still trust these guys with my life, because I saw the dichotomy of these goofy bubbleheads. Bubblehead is the slang word for submariner. Yeah, I saw the dichotomy between these goofy bubbleheads and how they can turn into the consummate professionals at the drop of a hat. So, yeah, I'm proud to have served, and proud to have served with the guys I did.
So, what was a typical day like?
Well, wow, depends on what your role was. If you're new on the ship, you're what's called a non-qual on a sub. And you have qualified people and non-qualified people. Qualified people wear dolphins, like these. And I guess the easiest way to explain it is, to a submariner, earning your dolphins is sort of the same as an aviator earning his wings.
Oh, okay.
I guess aviators would say, no, ours are more important. But no, to a submariner, earning your dolphins is a big deal. And it's not easy to do. So it's something that I'm proud I did. But a non-qual or a nub, when they first report on board a ship, they were obligated to do 90 days of mess cooking duty, or we call it mess cranking. And yeah, basically you just do all the jobs in the galley or the kitchen that nobody else wants to do. And you do it for 90 days, and then after that, if you went to an A school and you're already assigned to a division, then you go to your job. If you did not go to an A school, you're what's considered a striker, and you go to deck division. Basically, you're a deck ape until you decide what job you want to go for. And so, yeah, that life on board a sub for a newbie is a little bit unpleasant, but everybody has to go through it, and it's just part of the game.
So it's like an initiation, or
pretty much. It's like you're just thrown into an unpleasant situation, and the command wants to see how you deal with it. Because if you can't deal with being a mess crank for 90 days, what are you going to be like if you're actually in a wartime situation under real pressure?
So I know we've talked about this, and I'm sure people might be curious. I always thought, what if they freak out the first time that they're in a submarine? But you've told me about submarine school.
Yeah. Every submariner, and I should clarify before we go any further, is I'm talking about being a submariner in the early 1980s. So it's like over 40 years ago that I did this. So obviously the technology has changed. A lot of things have changed. Probably the living quarters and conditions, but the basic way a submarine operates has not changed. So I just wanted to make that clear, that what I'm talking about is serving on a submarine 40 years ago. So having said that, I'm sorry, what was your question?
So tell us about submarine school.
Yeah, you definitely do not want to put someone in the fleet that's claustrophobic. And that's one of the things that submarine school is for, because they have ways of finding out if you are claustrophobic. And one of them is, what's called escape training. We put on what's called a stanky hood. I don't know if they still use that now, but basically it's just like a life vest with a hood. and you get in this tiny little tube filled with water. I think you're down 50 feet, and you have to go out through a pressurized chamber and go up, and you say ho 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 all the way up because you don't want to get the bends. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're low enough in that, but it's for actual escape training. If your sub goes down and you have to escape from it, that's how you do it. The last thing they want to do is put a submariner in the fleet who's going to freak out when they dive. And I will have to say the Navy does a very good job of weeding out the claustrophobic people in sub school, because I never heard tell of anybody freaking out because they were claustrophobic on a submarine. So I'll give the Navy credit there. They do a good job of weeding out the people who might freak out when the ship dives.
So how long would you stay at sea?
Well, I was on what was called a fast attack ship, and there were two types of ships. We called them boomers and fast attacks. And the major difference between the two, the boomers were a larger ship, which carried the big nuclear warheads. Mm-hmm. And we call them boomers because they can make things go boom. And but the main purpose of a boomer was as a deterrent. It's like, well, our enemies know we're out there. They know what we're capable of, so don't do it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this was in the time of the Soviet Union. I served during the Cold War era. So, there was a legitimate threat of nuclear war there. And both countries had their boomers out, mm-hmm. and we both knew what the other was capable of. So they were out there as deterrents. That was their main job. And a boomer went, their role was in 3 months, out 3 months, in 3 months, out 3 months. And at that time, they always went to Holy Loch, Scotland. That was their port of call. And that was their routine, in 3 months, out 3 months. Now, on a fast attack ship like I was on, we had a much more erratic schedule. I made 3 extended deployments while I was in, but the other times it's like you might be out 2 weeks, in for a week, out 3 days, in for a month, out 3 weeks. Yeah, we had a very erratic schedule. We sort of sometimes didn't know a whole lot of ahead of time that we were going to be out. But where a boomer's primary mission was a deterrent, a fast attack's primary mission was to go to war and sink ships, mm-hmm. sink the enemy. That was our function.
So how long would you actually be submerged?
That also varied. A lot of times we would routinely come up to periscope depth to take bearings and to reventilate the ship. And other times we were submerged for, I think the longest we were ever submerged without coming up was 2 months. We made an Arctic expedition to the North Pole in 1981. I think we were the 19th American sub to ever do it. And we were literally under ice-covered waters, and we couldn't surface until we found an area of the ice called a polynya, which was thin enough to accommodate the entire ship to surface through the ice. And it was very important to find a polynya that would accommodate the whole ship, because if you have a problem or damage the ship while you're underneath ice-covered waters at the North Pole, there ain't no AAA to call.
Yeah.
But we would stay surfaced, or I think on a Mediterranean cruise, if I'm not mistaken, we stayed submerged for 2 months straight and never came up to periscope depth. Wow. And that's the time where when you can't go to periscope depth and reventilate, A submarine creates its own atmosphere. We have an O2 generator that creates oxygen, a CO2 scrubber that takes the carbon dioxide out of the air, a COH2 burner that takes other contaminants out of the air. There was a unit called CAMS. I think it stood for Central Atmosphere Monitoring System. Back then, I could have told you how the thing worked, but it's after 40 years, you forget a few details.
You still remember the acronym. That's pretty good.
Yeah, but anyway, it would give you the readings of all the atmospheric components. Yeah, pretty amazing piece of equipment for the early 80s. And we were cutting edge technology for the early 80s.
So what does it smell like inside of a submarine, I wonder?
Well, it's pretty amazing. What I was just telling you about, the time that we stayed submerged for 2 months straight, and we were breathing man-made air for 2 months straight. I can remember when we surfaced, and I was on a lookout watch at the time, so I went up through the sail, and I was actually the one who opened the hatch. And when the seal broke and it went, the air actually stunk. It smelled bad after 2 months of breathing man-made air. Yeah, it just smelled bad, but not for very long. But it's sort of amazing that even out in the ocean back in the early 80s, you could smell the contaminants when you were away from it for a long time.
That's crazy.
So, yeah.
So what is the sleeping situation like?
Well, it's interesting on a fast attack of the 80s. So the officers have their own area. They get the nicest quarters because they're officers. The chief petty officers and above have their own area too. We called it the goat locker, the old man's. But so it was slightly nicer than the rest of the crew. And the other crew's quarters, the more senior crew members had their own space, but it was very tight. We called them little coffin racks because they were stacked 3 high.
Oh, wow.
And they were very tiny. You did not have room to. It took an effort just to roll over in them. So that was another indication that, yeah, you can't be claustrophobic. And in addition to that, for privacy, you had a naugahyde curtain that you pulled. So really, when you pulled the little naugahyde curtain, it kind of felt like what you'd imagine a coffin would feel like. And what's funny is when you pulled the naugahyde curtain, the CO2 that you breathed out couldn't escape as readily as it would if you didn't have the curtain closed. So we would have bizarre dreams that we call CO2 dreams. You know, when you're breathing in your own CO2, you tended to have wackier dreams. So it was a thing on a submarine. It's like, oh, I had the weirdest CO2 dream last night.
And did they all have their own sleeping quarters?
No, actually, a lot of times there were more people than there were sleeping berths. And because occasionally you would have riders or guests on the ship. And for whatever reason, there was more crew members than there were places to sleep. So guess what? The junior people, the nubs, would get what we'd call a portable rack, and they'd put them in the torpedo room. So yeah, when I was a nub on the ship, I spent many a night sleeping next to a Mark 48 torpedo.
Oh, wow.
So and you'd sometimes have to share the rack. We call that hot racking. So yeah, you got to know some of your shipmates a little more than you wanted to.
So something else that most people are curious about is, what is the food situation?
Well, submariners actually had a reputation for being some of the best fed sailors in the fleet. And to a degree, that was true, because sometimes we would get pull into a port and have steak and lobster and have surf and turf night. And when we left, we would get some of the better chow in the Navy. But the thing is, when you were out on extended deployment, well, the fresh veggies would run out, the fresh fruit would run out, the fresh milk would run out. And all of a sudden you go from eating well to eating powdered eggs and powdered milk, and the most infamous meal on a submarine was called mid-rats, or midnight rations. They served 4 meals a day. And mid-rats was the fourth, because obviously somebody was always on watch. And mid-rats was the most infamous one, because usually it came down to sandwiches and a mystery stew. And when you ran out of milk and everything, we had what was called bug juice. And it was sort of like Navy Kool-Aid, but trust me, bug juice was more appropriate.
Oh my goodness.
So we would start out being fed well, but it disintegrated. It diminished quickly if we were on extended deployment.
So, again, I'm sure people have this question. So, how would you dispose of trash or, other waste?
Well, that was also a duty of the mess crank. So you had a TDU room, trash disposal unit, and you had these dangerous little metal sheets that you had to wrestle and fold into a cylindrical tube, and it was easy to get cut on them. I hope they have a safer method to do it these days than they did back then. But yeah, it was so easy to cut yourself if you weren't careful. But you'd have to bend these things into a cylindrical tube, and we had a trash compactor that you would put a weight, like I don't remember how heavy the weight was, 10 pounds maybe, I don't remember exactly, but you'd put it in the bottom of the metal cylindrical tube, the waste disposal tube, so that the trash would sink. And then you would just compact the trash. I mean, it was amazing how much you could get in there with a compactor. And then it would be shot to sea. And that's how you dealt with trash.
And what about clothes? Like, what do you wear at sea?
Well, now, it probably isn't this way today. Like I said, 40 years ago, I haven't kept up with submarine life over the years.
Submarine etiquette?
Yeah, but in our day, the rules were a lot more lax at sea for submariners. It's like you could have facial hair. Some guys would let their hair grow long when they were at sea. They had to get it cut again when we hit port. But and you could wear your Navy uniform. You could wear civilian clothes if you wanted to at sea. So and I guess it depended on the captain. I wore what a lot of the guys wore. It was called a poopy suit. Basically just a one-piece suit that was pretty comfortable, and that's what I usually wore at sea. But yeah, the guys could pretty much wear whatever they wanted to, and the captain didn't care.
So how about showers and going to the bathroom?
Oh, well, that brings up an interesting point. So we'll talk about showers first. And so they do have a finite amount of potable water on a submarine. You don't shower with salt water. So there is a limited supply. So we had to take what's called submarine showers. So basically you wet yourself down in the shower, soap up, and then rinse yourself off. And you needed to be in and out in 5 minutes, or the guys behind you would start calling Hollywood, Hollywood, taking a Hollywood shower. And so yeah, you wanted to take a submarine shower, not waste water, because the guy behind you is going to be really pissed if you used up all the water. And so that was the shower etiquette. Take a submarine shower, not a Hollywood shower. And as far as the way the toilets worked in the head, well, all the way, basically it worked like a septic tank. You had a unit called the infamous SAN 2, or sanitary tank number 2, is where all the human waste went. And to get rid of it, the tank was pressurized and a valve was opened beneath and it would be blown to sea. But while it was being blown to sea, it was important not to open the muzzle ball valves in the toilets in the head. So usually the A-ganger or the auxiliary men of the watch would hang signs in the toilet. Sanitary tank number 2 is being blown.
Oh.
Do not pull the valve. Do not pull the valve. And well, you can imagine what happens if the sanitary tank number 2 is pressurized and you pull that valve. That's what we call getting your brown dolphins.
Oh, goodness.
And I'm happy to say that I never got them, but I definitely heard of guys who did. I even had a friend who got them twice.
Oh, my goodness.
So, want to talk about something disgusting? Yeah, you do not want to get your brown dolphins.
Goodness. So, was there ever a time where you were genuinely scared?
I'd have to go with no. I guess the only time I ever thought about what I was doing in a way that might scare some people. Very first time I went to sea, just a 17-year-old kid, and I remember the very first time we dove. It's like we got out into deep enough water, you flood the ballast tanks, the ship goes down. Very first time that happened, I was actually in my rack, in my bunk. And when we got down, submariners actually prefer to be submerged, because when you're on the ship, well, the ship is a cylindrical tube, and any kind of wave is going to make it go like this. And when you submerge, smooth sailing, buddy. You can literally dive beneath a hurricane, and if you go deep enough, you don't feel it. So yeah, a submariner prefers to be submerged. But the first time we ever did that, I was laying in my bunk, and I just thought about it. All this water around me, and then I just rolled over and went to sleep, and never really thought about it again. It's just a job.
Wow. So, how do you keep from losing your mind?
Well, submariners are they're a unique bunch. And some of the stuff that we do to stay sane, I don't really want to talk about on here. Even after 40 years, I don't want to get somebody in trouble. But yeah, we're just you do what you had to, because I mean, back in those days, there was no video games or Nintendos to bring with you. We actually talked to each other. We actually became friends. And when you're in an environment like that, even after all these years, I feel like if I got together with some of these guys today, it would just immediately go back to what it was.
So let me ask you one last question.
Okay.
So how did the experience change you?
Well, like I said, when I was just a kid when I went in, 17 years old, and in a lot of ways, I was going down a path that didn't hold a very good future for me. And so the Navy of the late 70s, early 80s, in a lot of ways, it didn't resonate with me, because it was kind of exclusively a culture of negative reinforcement, which never really resonated with me. However, it did, in its own crazy way, give me goals, give me direction, and discipline, which I really had very little of any of that when I first went in. So despite what I might not have liked about the Navy, I'll always be grateful to it for setting me on the path to become a man. And even when I got out, you know, I was still a kid, but I had something I didn't have before. I had goals, and I had direction, and I had much more discipline than I had when I went in. So I'll always be grateful to the Navy for that.
Well, thank you, Rick. That was really interesting.
Well, thank you. You're a great interviewer.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Go ahead and click it like you mean it.
So now the coffin bunks make sense. That's why you sleep like a statue.
Hey, after sleeping in quarters the size of a gym locker for 4 years, sleeping in a queen bed feels like a ballroom.
Yet you still manage to elbow me in the ribs.
That's not me. That's residual Navy training.